But I used to work in British movie pictures, which were what they call quota pictures, because we used to have so many imports of American pictures in those days that we had to pass a law so that we weren't completely overwhelmed, as we were at one time in peril of being on television, and we had to do something to protect our own industry, and so we made a lot of British quota pictures, which were some good and some bad. Have any of you ever seen a picture I made where I co-starred with Douglas Fairbanks called Mr. Drake's Duck? Did anybody see that? No? Well, it's funny you haven't, because it's always being shown on television as a sort of late show. In America, it's been shown about 3,000 times, I'm happy to say. But if ever you get to see it, look at it, because it's a very funny idea. It's a story about a duck who laid an atomic egg. Which you can imagine from then on what happens. You know, the army comes, but the duck walks, and they say, that duck's ours, and the Navy says it swims, so it's ours. And the Air Force say it flies, so they say it's ours. So the Army and the Navy and the Air Force descend on this farm to try to grab this duck, and they can't tell which duck laid the atomic egg. Very funny idea. Eventually, when they've all got it, they've taken the duck away that does lay the atomic egg. Douglas Fairbanks hits his breakfast egg with a teaspoon, and they got the wrong duck. See it if you can. But those are the sort of pictures that I made. I was playing then, when I was in my late 20s and early 30s, I was usually playing people who were around 80. Because in those days, they didn't use 80-year-old people to play 80-year-old men. They used character actors to do so. I don't mind you looking at your watch. That's when you shake it. I don't like it. And so, yeah. So I continued in the movie industry like this, making quickie movies for many, many years. At the same time, I was working on vaudeville, working in what you call vaudeville music hall. You know what that means?
Nightclub act.
No, not nightclub acts, but variety. Does that mean anything? Did you ever have vaudeville theatres where people did? You went and saw an evening of acts in the theatre. You know, where you had a dancing troupe to begin with, and then a juggler, and then a comedian, and then you have that. What do you call that? No, is that right? Vaudeville. Vaudeville. Yeah. Well, I was in that. We call it music hall, and I was in music hall for many years, working on Empire circuits. And so I had a pretty busy life. I was on the radio about 10 times a week because we were repeated. We did shows for workers' playtime, which was things for entertaining factories, because factories always have music and shows on, and while they were working, they found it was conducive to working harder. They had some entertaining things on radio. And when the BBC was in its heyday, we did an awful lot of those sort of broadcasts as well. So this was a very lucrative time for me. And in the summer, everybody else went away and did summer shows, and they did shows at all the big seaside resorts like Blackpool and Brighton and Yarmouth and Bournemouth, and they would do big seaside shows, the stars of the variety business, who were these stars then because there was no television. But I didn't. I used to go to the south of France and live on a boat that I managed to buy off a smuggler very cheap. And a fellow called Anthony Steele, who's a completely unknown actor, he's now been and gone. One time he was a very big actor. Another actor called Jon Pertwee, a French actor. Anybody know who Jon Pertwee? Yeah, Jacques Selmas. We were real bums, and we just lived on this boat, and we had a great time. And of course, I was very happy because I got all the repeat money coming in from all these radio shows that I'd done. So they used to repeat some of my shows 5 times a week, and I got the money rolling in without doing any work for it, which was lovely. Yeah.
I was wondering, how did you first get your role as the doctor?
I heard that story yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, one small point. I don't know if any of you here know of the British game show called Joker's Wild.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the best game shows that ever did, because you don't have members from the audience going up to make compose themselves. I understand that you were once on this program.
Yes, I was on it for a long time. Yeah, who was it? Les Dawson? Myself and Barry Cryer was the question master. He was a wonderful writer and actor. All it was an excuse for us to tell stories. I've even forgotten the setup. Well, I think we were given a bit of paper or something.
It was a good game. We had 6 comedians on each team, and they would battle for laughs. And I thought it was a great program because it was a great half-hour comedy.
Oh, that's right. Yes, we had to tell stories, and I had to get a funnier, bigger laugh than Les, and Les had to get a bigger laugh than me. And that was very hard, I tell you.
Is it all impromptu, or did you have an idea of what you were doing?
Well, nothing's impromptu. No, not really. You couldn't be is that impromptu? No, we were given subjects. So the producer would ring us up and say, all right, you're going to be asked to tell a joke on landladies, and another joke on old motor cars and things, or something like that. And then it's up to you to get the joke.
Yeah.
But you know, we used to go, and somebody said, right, now, ready? Landladies. You went, oh my God, landladies come. Wow, that's when all the actors came in. You had all your landlady jokes already. Yeah.
Anyone in the audience like to ask a question?
Yeah, anybody like to ask a question? Yeah. Yes.
I just remember the ending of the Doctor Who particular series, Green Death.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Grant left the series. I thought that ending was so superb because I've never seen a Doctor Who. It was a melancholy type ending. Was that written into the story, or was that something that you kind of did on your own at the end of that? That was kind of the end of Joe Grant.
Well, I mean, are you saying...
look back kind of wistfully, and most Doctor's companions, it wasn't quite as pronounced, the...
Poignancy?
Yeah, the poignancy and bye-bye. More than bye-bye.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it probably means they weren't such good actors.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as ad-libbing on television. You couldn't do it, of course. Emotionally, you can to a degree, but it couldn't take any longer doing it on the recording than you did in the rehearsal room, because everything is timed to a second. Every scene is timed, but if that scene overruns, you're in dead trouble. You know, it means the editor's got to get very busy with his scissors and this can make nonsense. And there have been some Doctor Who's, and mercifully not my time, but there have been Doctor Who's where they've obviously made some editing and they've made a lot of rubbish out of some of the stories, you see. Now, I'll tell you, remember that we've been together for a very long time. We got on, as I told you stories about her yesterday. She was a very endearing lady. She was an incredibly vulnerable girl. Because she was completely and utterly blind. She couldn't see a damn thing. She didn't know where she was going. I went into all this yesterday. And therefore one felt that the Doctor was always being protective towards his females and towards his companions. But to me it's always seemed that with other Doctors that they've always been really inhuman in their attitudes towards women. I mean, I'm very heterosexual. And if you've got a beautiful girl like this, an enchanting creature, it seems quite right that there should be emotion between the two. I'm not saying that's necessarily sexual. If that came out, and then that was a mistake. Well, because there was this was in fact the time when she was leaving, and it seemed to be almost written like that. You know, it wasn't at all. I mean, she didn't know when they wrote that story. They didn't know that Katie was leaving, and it was only later on that they brought in the young man who played the scientist, and that she was going. And that's when they rewrote the story with the scientist going away. So the Green Death was written as a story on its own, separately. But then that was sort of the last one, and she decided she wanted to move on quite correctly, as every young actress should. But I know that there were occasions when the director would say, "Hey, tone it down. It's showing, and it mustn't do." But does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, good.
I think it is far more effective to have it showing, I think. I believe the Doctor's character is one of the very caring. That is one of the gems, I think, Doctor Who, that scene. It really is. So
well, it was a beautifully written scene, of course, and that does make a world of difference if you've got a really good scene. And also, thank the Lord, the director and the producer said, we're not going to hurry you. You can play this at your own time. I mean, not to go on forever, but have been playing at your own time. Don't feel you're rushed to get through it. Make the most of the scene. It's a well-written scene, and we'll let it go, let it run. That's why, if you remember, that's the very last scene with the car driving off. And they didn't rush that scene. In fact, I think you saw rather the lovely shot of it in silhouette going over the hill. Yeah. There's a young man back there, which I must point out, because he's rather small and we can't see him. Yes, young sir.
Well, according to also in the story of the Green Death, I wonder those maggots. What did you use for them?
What did we use for the maggots? That's a good question. We couldn't use maggots because, of course, they're too small, and we couldn't blow them up into the big enough. We used model maggots. They were about that big. I had one in my house. They were worked with a hand inside by prop-men that made them wriggle. Their mouths opened like that. They had horrible little teeth. You may remember when they went and they reared up. They were absolutely revolting. They were covered in plastic and like cling foil, which was oiled. And they were revolting. Now, the funny story about that is that we used to use a thing which I don't know. Do you know what I mean about, say, colour separation overlay?
Yeah.
Oh, you would, of course you do. Well, that means that you are acting. It's no good holding your hand up here. Put it down. I'll be with you in about 3/4 of an hour. Yeah. Now, this means that if you want to for example, in one of them, there was a time when the man took his mask off. He took his great big mask off, and he was headless. Remember in Patrick Crowd and the three doctors? Well, that was because he had a yellow bag over his head, and he stood in front of a yellow wall, and when they photographed it, the head disappears. So this can happen with gloves. You put yellow gloves on against a yellow background, and the hands disappear. So what we did is we would have the maggots, and they'd be crawling along a floor that was all yellow. And there was a barricade of yellow, and they were behind it, and they were doing this with it, you see. Now, Katie and I were in another room, if you remember, sitting and looking into the fire, when suddenly Katie goes, ah, and the door opens, and in comes one of these awful maggots. Now, what we had to do, we had to be busy acting and reacting to a maggot that wasn't there. The maggot was in the other studio. But what the camera was doing, the camera was superimposing it into our situation. So, what we did is we marked, all the lights are marked with numbers. And I said to Katie, right, now we're going to leave, when the maggot comes in, he's underneath camera 32. And then he's got, after the fact, well, count 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, the next line you'll be under camera 30. And so on, you see, under all these things. So our eyes could go, look at it, oh, darling. That was useless for Katie. She couldn't damn well see the bloody number. So I'd be saying, oh, look at the maggot. She'd say, yes, it's terrible. Over there. Oh, yes. So I know what's up.
One time when Katie ran into a tree.
Yes, she ran into everything. Because I'd say without her glasses, she couldn't see a thing. Couldn't see anywhere where she was going.
Is there any reason why she didn't have contacts or something?
It's because her eyesight was so bad, the contacts wouldn't work. The other day, and for anybody that has eyesight trouble, I actually met a gentleman who had astigmatism, which I'm not quite sure what that is, but I think it means there's a twist or something.
So you can see vertically, say, better than horizontally, or vice versa.
That's right. So, and up until now, you couldn't use contact lenses with astigmatism, but you can now.
Yes.
Did you know that? Yeah. You
I know that.
Oh, what did you told me?
No.
The other night. I only just learned it a few days ago, and I'd never heard of it. So I knew that people with astigmatism, you couldn't normally use contact lenses, but now you can, in case any of you've got astigmatism trouble. Katie, unless you put a couple of magnifying glasses stuck in her eyeballs, it's not very good at all. Her glasses were that thick. She was practically blind. She sees nothing, and maybe they'll invent a contact lens soon, which you can wear. I hope you can. They can.
Let's stick out here, but anyone else?
Thanks. John, I'm on route to England tomorrow. I would like to move there to be a musician and a singer. And what label are you? How many records do you make?
How many records have I made?
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose about 30.
What label you are on?
What label? Anybody who'll give me a job. I've been on all sorts of labels. I've been on Music for Pleasure, and I've been on Philips, and I've been on all sorts of labels. Yeah. Yes, sir.